Okay, so dito naman tayo ngayon sa section D ng ating module, page 25. So, dito sa section D, pinag-uusapan natin ang converse statement. So, ang converse statement is kapag sinwitch natin ang hypothesis and conclusion. Or in Tagalog, kapag pinagpalit natin ang hypothesis at conclusion. Yun yung converse statement. For example, if the triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular. So, ang converse nun is yung conclusion, no? Uunahin natin ngayon to. If the triangle is equiangular, then it is equilateral. So, pinagpalit natin yung equilateral at yung equiangular. And example number 2, if a man is honest, then he does not steal. Ang converse nun is if a man does not steal, so unahin natin tong conclusion, does not steal. If a man does not steal, he is honest. Wala yung salitang then. So pwede yun, no? Minsan kahit kama lang ang binasa mo, ang hulugan na nun is then. Kapag ang tao daw ay hindi nagnanakaw, then he is honest. So, kapag both conditional, pag sinabing conditional, ito yung original statement natin. No? Original. Both conditional and converse statements are true. Pwede daw natin silang i-connect ng if and only if. Yan minsan ang short abbreviation ng if and only if. At ang tawag daw dito ay biconditional statement. So in Tagalog, pag yung conditional statement, yung original conditional statement natin is true, at yung converse niya ay true din, pareho silang true, yung conditional statement at saka yung converse parehong true, then pwede daw, then yun daw ay isang biconditional statement. Pwede daw natin silang i-connect ng if and only if. Ang magandang example dito is number 1. Kasi sa number 2, pag ang isang tao ay honest, hindi siya nagnanakaw. This is true. Pero pag binaliktad natin, kapag ang tao ay hindi nagnanakaw, then siya ay honest. So, para sa akin, this is false. Kasi hindi naman ibig sabihin na kapag ang tao ay hindi nagnanakaw, ay automatic honest na siya. Merong mga tao na kahit hindi nagnanakaw ay minsan nakakapagsinungaling or may ibang ginagawang hindi honest. Okay, so hindi natin gagamitin example to number 2 kasi para sa akin, yung converse ay nagre-result ng false. So dito tayo sa number 1. Saan yung conditional statement at yung converse ay parehong true. In Tagalog, kapag ang triangle ay equilateral, pare-pareho ang sukat ng side, then ito ay isang equiangular, pare-pareho ang sukat ng angle. Kagaya ng diniscuss natin, no? Ito Ito yung triangle na pare-pareho ang sukat ng side at pare-pareho rin ang sukat ng angle. Okay, so kapag binaliktad natin to, kinonverse natin to, no? Pag naman daw ang triangle ay equiangular or pare-pareho ang sukat ng angle, then ito daw ay equilateral, pare-pareho daw ang sukat ng side. This is also true. So true ang conditional statement, true ang converse, therefore pwede natin gawing biconditional statement ito. Okay? So, paano natin gagawing biconditional statement? Lalagyan natin ng if and only if. Kagaya nito. A triangle is equilateral if and only if it is equiangular. Yan. Pwede lang natin lagyan ng if and only if kapag yung original statement at saka yung converse statement niya ay parehong true. Okay? Pero pag hindi, kagaya nitong number 2, hindi natin pwedeng lagyan ng if and dahil ba hindi siya nagnanakaw, honest na kagad siya. So, maaaring ang isang tao ay hindi nagnanakaw pero minsan nakakapagsinungaling or minsan nandadaya sa girlfriend, boyfriend, or asawa. So, ibig sabihin, kapag hindi nagnanakaw, automatic, hindi honest. Kaya medyo malabo tong number 2. Hindi natin pwedeng gawing biconditional statement ito. So again, kapag ang conditional statement is true, and then yung converse niya ay true din, no? Pag pinagbaliktad natin yung hypothesis and conclusion, true, then pwede natin tong gawing biconditional statement. Natin ng if and only if. Okay. So, pag lalagyan natin ng if and only if, mawawala na yung if sa umpisa. Pupunta na sa gitna. So, ang mangyayari is, a triangle is equilateral, no? Ang isang triangle daw ay tayo sa original. Ang isang triangle daw ay equilateral if and only if it is equiangular. If and only if it is equiangular. Mawawala na rin yung then. Mawawala yung if, mawawala yung then. Papalitan itong then ng if and only if. So that's biconditional statement. Now, kapag meron naman daw tayong biconditional statement, pwede daw nating paghiwalayin ito at gawing conditional statement and its converse. So, for example, two angles are complementary if and only if the sum of their measure is 90 degrees. So, kanina, nabasa natin is complementary, ngayon naman is supplementary. Supplementary. So, ano ba yung complementary? Okay, so, saglit lang Paano ko ba saglit lang I'll try to show you an example of complementary angles. Okay, saglit lang Okay, ito isang example ng complementary angles. Okay? Saan na ba yan? Ito. Ito na. Okay. Okay? So, yung nakikita natin dito is an example of complementary angle. No? Yung sukat ng isang angle is 60, yung sukat ng pangalawang angle is 30. Kapag tinotal mo yung sukat ng dalawang angle is equal to 90 degrees. So this is example of complementary angles. Okay? Ito pa isang example. Okay, saglit lang Ito pa isang example. Okay, this is another example. So, meron tayong angle dito. Ang sukat is 60 degrees. And then, meron another angle dito. Ang sukat is 30 degrees. So, yung dalawang angle ay complementary. Kasi 60 plus 30 is equal to 90. No? So, basta nagtototal ng 90, ang tawag sa dalawang angle na yun ay complementary. No? Okay. Ngayon, alam na natin kung anong complementary. Let's go back to yung dinidiscuss natin. Okay. So, ito yung biconditional, no? Two angles are complementary if and only if the sum of their measure is 90 degrees. So, in Tagalog, ang dalawang angle ay complementary if and only if, okay, complementary daw sila if and only if yung total ng kanilang sukat ay 90 degrees. Okay? So, paano daw natin yan? Pwede daw natin paghiwalayin yan at makakakuha tayo ng conditional statement at converse statement. So, ang conditional statement is if two angles are complementary, then ang total ng kanilang sukat ay 90 degrees. Ang converse naman yan, if the sum of the measure of two angles is 90 degrees, okay, itong conclusion, inuna naman natin ngayon, no? If the sum of the measure of two angles is 90 degrees, then they are complementary. Okay, so baliktad naman ang process ngayon. Nagsimula tayo sa biconditional, and then nagkaroon tayo ng isang conditional at saka ng isang converse. Kanina, meron tayong conditional at saka converse. Since parehong true ang conditional at true ang converse, nakagawa tayo ng biconditional statement. Naglagay tayo ng if and only if. Okay? So, yun ang biconditional. And then, meron naman itong tinatawag na inverse statement at saka contrapositive statement. So, the inverse statement is the negative of the hypothesis and conclusion. Ang contrapositive naman is the negative of the converse. Okay? So, meron tayong isang example dito. Okay, so a polygon with exactly 4 sides is a quadrilateral. In Tagalog, ang isang hugis na may 4 na side ay quadrilateral. Okay, so tama naman, no? Pag sinabing quadrilateral, meron siyang 4 na side. So, ang original statement is if a polygon has exactly 4 sides, then it is quadrilateral. In Tagalog, kapag ang isang hugis ay may eksaktong 4 na side, then ito ay quadrilateral. So kapag binaliktad natin yung conclusion, pinagbaliktad natin yung conclusion at saka yung hypothesis, ang tawag doon is converse. No, itong dalawa, converse. Pag pinagbaliktad natin, ang tawag doon is the converse. So, uunahin natin tong conclusion na quadrilateral, magiging if a polygon is quadrilateral, then it has exactly 4 sides. Yun. So, yung hypothesis dito ay naging conclusion dito. No? O kapag ninegative mo naman daw ang conditional, ang tawag doon is inverse. Kapag ninegative mo naman ang converse, ang tawag doon is contrapositive. So, tignan natin tong conditional. If a polygon has exactly 4 sides, Pag yan ni-negative mo, if a polygon does not have four sides. Okay, conclusion. Then, it is a quadrilateral. Negative. Then, it is not a quadrilateral. In Tagalog, para mas madaling maintindihan, kapag ang isang hugis ay merong eksaktong apat na side, negative. If kapag ang isang hugis ay does not have, walang eksaktong apat na side. Okay, so conclusion, then it is a quadrilateral. Then ito ay quadrilateral. Negative, then hindi ito quadrilateral. Okay? So yung inverse is the negative nitong conditional statement. So tignan naman natin ngayon itong converse. Yung pinagpalit natin yung conclusion at saka hypothesis, pinagpalit natin. So dito, yung conclusion, dito sa converse, ginawa nating hypothesis yung conclusion. And then, yung conclusion nito is yung hypothesis nito. Okay. Yung hypothesis nito, pinagpalit natin dito sa conclusion, nagpalit. So, pag ni-negative naman daw natin to, ang tawag doon is contrapositive. So, let's try to negate, no? So, if a polygon is quadrilateral, so anong negative nun? If a polygon is not a quadrilateral. So, kalimitan, lalagyan lang natin ng not, no? Ibabaliktad natin. Then, it has exactly four sides. Then, it does not have exactly four sides. So, yun ang negative nun. And then, kalimitan, tinitignan natin kung true or false yung statement. So, number one, conditional statement. Kung ang hugis ay may apat na side, then ito ay quadrilateral. That's true. Converse. Kapag ang isang hugis ay quadrilateral, then ito ay may apat na side. That is also true. Inverse, no? We are speaking in Tagalog para mas madaling maintindihan, ano? If a polygon, kapag ang polygon daw ay walang apat na side, then hindi ito quadrilateral. That is also true. And then, yung contrapositive, yung negative ng converse, converse ay kapag ang polygon ay quadrilateral, then meron itong apat na side. Converse is pag ang polygon ay hindi quadrilateral, then wala itong apat na side. That's also true. Okay, so yung apat na version is nagre-result into true. So another example is two line segments of equal length are congruent. So pag ibig sabihin ng congruent, salitang congruent is magkapareho. So kapag ang dalawang line segment daw, for example, meron tayong line segment, one, And then 2. Okay, so kung meron daw tayong dalawang line segment, isipin natin, kunyari, pareho ang haba nila, no? Yung sukat. So, yan dalawang line daw niyan ay congruent or magkapareho sila. Okay, so, gagawa tayo ng conditional statement. If two line segments are equal in length, then they are congruent. In Tagalog, kapag ang dalawang line segment ay pareho ang haba, then they are congruent. Converse. Okay, so pagbabalik rin natin yung conclusion with the hypothesis. So, ang conclusion dito is congruent. Gagawin natin hypothesis. If two line segments are congruent, then they have equal lengths. In Tagalog, kapag ang dalawang line segment ay congruent, then meron itong equal lengths. Pareho ang haba nito. No? So again, ang line segment is yung mga linya. No? That's line segment. Line segment. Kapag congruent daw ay meron daw silang parehong haba. So this is true. Ang converse natin is true. Itong conditional natin is true also. No? Kasi kapag ang dalawang line segment ay pareho ang haba, then sila ay congruent. Kung dalawang line segment naman ay congruent, then pareho ang haba nila. Okay, so inverse, i-negate natin itong conditional statement natin. If two line segments are equal, if two line segments are not equal, no, lagyan lang natin ng not, kalimitan, ano? Kalimitan, no? Pero minsan hindi not. Depende sa, ano, basta ang idea is babalik ta rin natin. Then they are congruent, then they are not congruent. So, in Tagalog, kapag ang dalawang line segment ay hindi equal ang haba, then hindi sila congruent. Okay, another true. Another true. Okay. Contrapositive. Contrapositive ay nakukuha sa converse. Gagawin natin sa converse. Saan nakuha ang converse? Ang converse nanggaling sa conditional, yung conclusion, at saka yung hypothesis, pinagbaliktad. No? Yung conclusion na congruent ay naging hypothesis. And then, saan makukuha ang contrapositive? From the converse. Gagawin natin sa converse, ine-negative natin yung hypothesis and conclusion. So, ang hypothesis is if two line segments are congruent. Ang negative nun is if two line segments are not congruent, then they have equal lengths. Then, their lengths are not equal. So, meron nakalagay dapat dito. Di naputol siguro. Then, their lengths are not equal. Yan, their lengths are not equal. So, ulitin natin yung converse is they have equal lengths. So, ang converse nun is their lengths are not equal. Hindi daw pareho ang sukat ng kanilang haba. So, is this true or false? Tingnan natin in Tagalog. Kapag ang dalawang line segment ay hindi congruent, kapag yung dalawang line segment daw ay hindi congruent, then ang haba nila are not equal. So again, this is true. Minsan lahat sila puro true, minsan meron nagpo-false. So iba-iba ang result palagi. Pero in this our two example, parehong true lahat. True lahat. Nagiging true lahat. Okay, so let's now go to learning task 2. May mga tinatanong. So, kinopya ko lang lahat to. And then, sinulat ko dito. Okay. Number 1 question. What are the parts of a conditional statement? Answer. Siyempre, ang mga part is the hypothesis and the conclusion. Number 2. How do you write a converse statement? Okay, paano daw sinusulat ang converse statement? Answer. Interchange the hypothesis and conclusion. So, in Tagalog, para mas madaling maintindihan, yung converse, tandaan natin yung sapatos na converse, no? Yung converse ay pagpapalitin lang natin ang hypothesis and conclusion. Yun ang converse. Pagbabaliktarin lang natin ang hypothesis and conclusion. That is converse. Pagpapalitin lang natin ang hypothesis and conclusion. Yung conclusion magiging hypothesis at yung hypothesis magiging conclusion. That is converse. Number 3. When can you write a conditional statement into biconditional statement? Kailan daw pwedeng maging conditional? Kailan daw pwedeng isulat ang isang conditional statement into biconditional? Yung if and only if. So, pwede lang daw maging biconditional statement kapag if the conditional statement and its converse are both true. Kapag parehong true yung conditional statement at saka yung converse nito. Kapag parehong true. Then, biconditional statement. Pwede na tayong makagawa ng biconditional statement. Pero kung true ang conditional statement and false ang converse, or false to conditional statement and then true ang converse, hindi pwedeng biconditional statement yon. Kailangan pareho ang conditional statement at saka ang converse, pareho kailangan dapat true para magkaroon tayo ng if and only if biconditional statement. Okay? Number 4, how do you write inverse statements? So, paano daw natin isusulat ang inverse statements? So, ang inverse statement is related to, itong inverse is related to, yung inverse is related to sa conditional. So, yung inverse is kung kung ano yung hypothesis, lagyan lang natin kalimitan ng not. Ina-negative natin. And kung ano yung conclusion, lagyan lang natin ng not or ina-negative natin. Ang conditional, ang inverse ay kabaliktaran ng inverse. Ang inverse ay kabaliktaran ng conditional. So, para masagot natin yon, paano daw isusulat ang inverse statement? So, ine-negate natin ang hypothesis and conclusion of the conditional statement. Ine-negative lang natin yung hypothesis and conclusion ng conditional statements. Ine-negative lang natin to. Yun yung inverse. Number 5, if you negate converse statement, what do you call the resulting statement? In Tagalog, pag ni-negative daw natin ang converse, ano daw ang tawag natin sa sagot? That is contrapositive. So, yung contrapositive naman is related to converse. Pag binaliktad daw natin tong converse, ang tawag doon is contrapositive. So, ito yung converse natin. Yung hypothesis, if the lines are congruent, lalagyan lang natin ng not. Gagawin nating negative yung hypothesis dito. And gagawin din nating negative yung conclusion. And they have equal lengths. Then their lengths are not equal. Okay? So, yung contrapositive is the negative of converse. Saan nanggaling ang converse? Nanggaling ang converse sa conditional statement. Pag pinagbaliktad natin yung conclusion at saka yung hypothesis, kapag pinagpalit natin, yun ang converse. Pinagpalit. Pag pinagpalit natin yung pwesto. Kapag ni-negative natin ang hypothesis at conclusion ng converse, that is contrapositive. Kapag ni-negative natin ang hypothesis at conclusion ng conditional statement, that is inverse. Okay. And that is the end of section D.